first elected officials from inside Colorado trying to strike down legalized marijuana in court. A group of 6 Colorado sheriffs kicked off their lawsuit at the Press Club in Washington, D.C.
They need direction from the courts which oath of office they are to uphold.
Larimer County Sheriff Justin Smith, the lead plaintiff, says he's torn between his oath to uphold the U.S. and Colorado constitutions because state and federal laws don't agree on pot. He's joined by counterparts in Kansas and Nebraska who say Colorado pot isn't staying in Colorado, and it's costing them more to crack down on it.
They're law enforcers, they're not lawmakers.
One of the fathers of Amendment 64, Mason Tvert, called on the sheriffs from Colorado to resign. Today, Tvert and the sheriff in studio to hash out their arguments over legal marijuana. Thanks so much for joining us on Balance of Power. I'm Brandon Rittiman, joined now by the sheriff and Mason. Thank you both for taking the time to be in here.
Good morning, Brandon.
Thank you for having me.
So when this news conference came out, I heard kind of both sides call into question the motives of the other side. I heard some talk at the press conference from you about how the campaign may not have been forthright with everything when they were trying to advance Amendment 64 from your perspective. I heard you saying that you thought this was the, I think you put it as the arrest and prosecution industry, that they just want to arrest folks. Do you honestly not believe that the guy sitting across the table from you actually has the best interest of Colorado at heart?
Well, he very well probably does, but the fact is that marijuana is an objectively less harmful substance than alcohol. A strong majority of Coloradans don't think adults should be arrested simply for using it. And, you know, I don't think our law enforcement officials should be fighting against voters and elected officials to keep arresting and prosecuting adults who are really not engaging in a behavior that is any really different than alcohol other than being less harmful.
Sure.
Well, and I think that's where it starts out with some of the misinformation. First of all, in Colorado, for 20 or 30 years, people have not actually been arrested, couldn't be arrested for simple possession of marijuana. It was a ticket at the time, so when those kind of facts came out, when Amendment 64 was pushed, they were absolutely inaccurate. When the citizens were told that the jails were filled with marijuana users, I had maybe 2 when I ran a check on my jail.
Now, you and Sheriff Chad Day at the press conference both said that you want this resolution, a yes or no answer of some kind on whether this is okay, whether Colorado can do this. I didn't hear either of you saying that you were against pot, but let's hear what your lawyer had to say.
The greatest concern that I have, and I think my colleagues have, and our plaintiffs have, is the exposure of youth to this drug because it's just not controlled. It's poisoning our young people. You
are on a lawsuit that seeks to end Colorado's legal marijuana program. Can you look at the 50+% of voters in Larimer County who decided they wanted that law straight in the face and tell them you're not trying to undo what they voted for?
What I'm doing is seeing to it that the Constitution is followed. We're a constitutional republic, which means any laws that are passed.
You don't think you're taking an anti-marijuana stance here?
What I'm taking is a pro-Constitution stance. And no matter what we do, no matter how well-intentioned it is, if it doesn't follow the Constitution, then it's not valid. So that's what we're coming down to, is maybe, just maybe, this was done in a method that didn't follow the Constitution.
I'd like to think that our law enforcement officials have more pressing things than flying to D.C. to stand with the Drug Free America Foundation, a anti-marijuana activist group, and try to turn these laws over. And most importantly, to try to do it in a way that gives the control of marijuana to the underground market instead of having state authority. I mean,
Cynthia Kaufman, just last week, our Attorney General, made that exact statement in front of the Attorneys General that she states that Colorado does still have the cartel. We see the evidence of the cartel still involved. There was a case that was made under a federal prosecution recently that demonstrated that still exists. So that's not a fair statement.
148,000 pounds of marijuana were sold by legitimate licensed businesses. Where do you think that marijuana would have been sold if it wasn't sold by licensed businesses?
Go to the web. You'll see it's sold illegally continually at this point. Go to Craigslist.
Wouldn't it be sold illegally? So you're saying you don't like the idea of some marijuana being sold illegally. So you want to wipe out all this legitimate selling
no, I'm not saying
and
that.
go back to a system where all the marijuana is being sold in this underground market.
It's a false premise to say that you're getting one or the other. You're still getting it.
It's been a year, sir. It's been 1 year.
What we're coming back to is the constitutional question.
The merits of the suit are clear. The Controlled
They're
Substances
not clear. The judge will decide.
The Controlled
that,
Substances
Mason.
Act says that you are able to do this, and you don't want to, so you are trying to get out of it.
But that's never been done in practice before, is the thing I want to get into with you. Because, yes, you can point to parts of the Controlled Substances Act that say states can have some control over marijuana. However, that's been generally interpreted to allow states to enact their own criminal statutes. There's nowhere where that's been pointed to before and actually been an enabler for a state to set up some sort of marijuana program. We did that by setting up a conflict, which they see with the Supremacy Clause. And how can you say that Colorado has the right to do this when the Supremacy Clause says if Congress weighs in, that's final, states don't get to override it?
Congress created the Controlled Substances Act, and when these states were passing these laws, we passed it in November 2012, they were given a report by their research service on the Controlled Substances Act and how this would all interplay. And what was reported to them was that it's clear that Congress did not intend to prevent states from taking actions to regulate and control marijuana. It's crazy. So what you want to go back to is all of a sudden there are thousands of people who are not being arrested for an activity that most people don't think you should be arrested for, going back to being arrested.
When you misrepresent those statements, when it's essentially a traffic ticket, it was a $100 fine. The law said a person could not be taken into custodial arrest for it. So when you repeat that lie,
Lakewood, Jefferson County had people that would sometimes go into jail for a day, 10 days. What if you're on probation? Then you go to jail. Then you go to prison. I mean.
If you violate probation, it's still under what you established.
Adults
under what you established.
That's what it comes down to.
I like the rule of law, Mason. I like the rule of law.
Follow our laws.
That's why we're going to court, because we believe this amendment does not follow the rule of law.
If you care about federal law, run for Congress. You are supposed to be representing Coloradans who voted for you.
Yes.
You're supposed to be enforcing Colorado's laws. You are not supposed to be
So you're telling me I'm not supposed to follow the U.S. Constitution?
You already said that you don't need to enforce federal laws.
No, enforcing and following is different. That same Constitution that establishes the rights of individuals is the same one that has the Supremacy Clause. That's the challenge. If a court comes back and says that doesn't apply, again, that's a win for you. If they come back and say it does apply, then they have to figure out what the remedy is.
All right. Gentlemen, we have gone a lot longer than the allotted time. We thought that might happen. You can catch the rest of our conversation right now on 9news.com. Sheriff Justin Smith, thank you so much for being in here. Mason Tavert, thank you for your time. As always, we want your feedback. We invite you to reach out to us. Shoot us an email, politics@9news.com, or send us a tweet @9newspolitics. Plenty more politics coming for you on 9 News this